Life is complex.
So is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone.
Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
And I'm Trent Akers.
And we welcome Julie Brams to our episode today. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
We are very excited because Julie nestles nicely into our thoughts around humanity. In fact, maybe even pushing into some angles that really weren't things that we had fundamentally considered and that we think are very valuable. Julie has recently written a book, which is The Nature Embedded Mind. And there's some key concepts that I really haven't heard anyone else talk about that I think can open up a lot of areas of growth, freedom, perhaps people that feel stuck in ways that they didn't even understand they were stuck in. And so, Julie, could you tell us a little bit about the concepts in your book?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, I'm coming from a background as a clinical mental health professional. I've been in private practice for about 34 years now. And so this is really an outgrowth of the kind of work that you both do and that, anyone else who's listening that's a mental health provider. This is, again, it's an extension of what we do. It's not in contrast to, it's very much in support of. But through my years, I, like many of us, wander through different niches, depending on sometimes what we're going through or what our clients are going through. We become very specialized in different things. And we all probably by this time understand mindfulness meditation as this kind of transdiagnostic way of, meeting all of our health, particularly our mental health. And then again, like what came together for me is my love of the earth, my love of maybe the best of humanity. I'm not always a fan of what we actually do, but I have always maintained a kind of a torch for I think we can do better and wondering why don't we? And so all of that sort of led itself into me exploring and then discovering this missing piece, I think, that's in the foundation of our mental health practice, which is our paradigm or our framework in our thinking that currently is severed from the rest of nature. And what I'm talking about and working toward is this reunification, or what I'm calling rerouting. So rerouting our mind back into the whole system in order to really become our most optimal self, our most, like the best of humanity comes out, I think, when we are in right relationship with the rest of nature. And I go so far as to say when we're back in reality.
I really love what you said there, Julie, like just that whole idea of rerouting, because it makes me think of like repotting a plant or reintroducing plants into soil. Because like as I was reading Jeremy's little breakdown for today, like and you mentioned it too, like the separation of humanity from nature, because we are nature, we come from nature, we've evolved from that, but we've also separated ourselves from doing that. And by doing that, we're almost like cutting off a lot of our senses. And so it's about how do we reintegrate that while also not losing what we have gained through technology. It's about really bringing that in through synergy. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. And, again, I talk about this in the book, but, I like to, again, I'm not a historian, so I'm always, please fact check me, everyone. But the idea, and again, just it's an idea that we're separate from the rest of nature, was implanted around 500 BCE, right? So this is not reality. It was a thought experiment or an idea, a philosophy that was put in. And at that time, not to go dark, but with great threat to life and limb if you didn't go along with this and tear yourself out of relationship with the earth in order to follow along an idea, a framework that took humans out of nature, ranked them superior to, objectified everything below it, and then therefore allow whoever is supposedly dominating to use and extract and, do whatever they want to whatever is supposedly below them. And we can
A resource. It becomes like just simply nature is a resource to be exploited and used and in some way to be dominated.
correct. And we can also see the problems that this way of thinking creates with other humans, because once you can objectify an anything, any being, you can then equate another human being to an animal that can be done with whatever you please. So again, like it's all helpful to humans, even though I think where my emphasis goes in order to break this way of thinking is to go straight into, what I'm calling earth-centered or earth-centric, as opposed to human-centered or anthropocentric. So, I'm always talking about it, and also from the simplest ways, the most simple embodied ways for people to learn to differentiate that and to practice being back in alignment.
I'm curious, Julie, like as you talk about this, because you've talked about the fact that humans kind of pick this up. So I'm wondering if this is something that you would say really is more innate in children, and then as they become more socialized and various things that they lose that. So is it really just about almost like rediscovering, and could you almost say like learning from the eyes of a child?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is, in fact, something that we have to be trained away from. We're conditioned to, be quiet about certain things that we may feel, like a connection to another species, that isn't one of the ones we allow each other to bond with dogs, cats, other things that we name pets. But, we train each other to disown some of the other relationships that we have as children or the ways of being that we have as children. And again, I was saying in the beginning times, people were punished by death. If you look into anti-pagan laws, many spikes along the trajectory that got us where we are. But at this point, what we use on each other is shame, humiliation, ridicule, name calling. So you get, people telling you you're crazy, or, different kinds of things that make it difficult to, even if someone holds true to, no, I do know what the water is saying, they won't tell anybody. Or, I have people that say to me, you're going to think I'm crazy. And I'm like, I am not going to think you're crazy. I'm going to think you're really sane. So let's hear it. So yes, children, come in, but we all do. We all come in before we have language overlaying. We have sensory experience, and that's how we relate to the rest of nature.
Something that really jumps out at me as you talk about the anti-pagan laws. That's really where my mind went when you started to discuss how did this divorcement happen. And we look back in history and we see that there was a fundamental process in which people related to the area of the earth that they lived in. For the plains people where we live that are here in southern Alberta, tobacco is sacred to them. And you look at the British people before the Romans, and they also were pagan. And I say British as if that's what they were. They weren't British at that time, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so there being a purposeful process in which power is wielded over people by divorcing them from the earth. At this point in time, we spend most of our life to buy a house that's sitting on a postage stamp size piece of land, and we pay taxes for it every month. It's never even actually ours, as if we can own land.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when you think about that too, like I also think about like the idea of even like Wicca culture or Wiccan, like because all of that traditional knowledge that is then lost, but then we also tell people to go outside and quote unquote touch grass. But can you really
Yeah.
touch grass? Because you're doing it on such the fundamental level, but are you really connecting with the grass, if that sounds like a weird statement to say.
Well, I think that's exactly my point. And we can, look to our own personal history if we remember as children how we felt or interacted with other than humans. We can look to our indigenous contemporaries who thankfully have retained, despite the atrocities of colonization, they have retained a lot. So we can, to the degree that that's shared with us, again, I am speaking mainly to this dominator culture, which happens to be white. And yeah, our own ancestors were also deeply rooted and related with the land, as you spoke of. So yeah, but yes, to your point about touching grass, this is the thing. It's so slippery because we can touch grass and never touch grass. We can touch grass and be like, I'm still a human and I'm touching this grass, rather than like stepping outside of what I'm calling this perceptual cage and saying, I'm nature, touching another part of nature. What
Mm.
does the grass feel? What do I notice about our interaction? How can I be kind? How can I be respectful? So adding that relational piece back in, which is, I think, sort of the key to this rerouting, is rerouting us back into a kinship with at least seeing the other than humans as our friends and family. But at the very end of if we follow it all the way through, we understand it is ourselves. Like there's no division. There's one planetary being that we are all in the process of co-creating every minute of every day, and we're adding something in, whether we know it or not. And so this is more about intentionality, or again, it's like getting the framework back into alignment with what's actually happening. And
Mhm.
that way, when we touch grass, it's a different experience. And
Mhm.
again, I don't even want to say what that is, because I think, again, it's really important to discover what is that from your own relationship with the grass that you touch, right? Like you're learning from the other than human. Does that make sense?
That does. Like, like when you say learning from the other than human, I almost think of like from the perspective of IFS, like whenever I get people to
Mm.
learn to cultivate self energy, it's always about let's do curiosity about the world and then we can bring that in. So when you're doing that, you learn from the other than human to learn about what is humanity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
again, it's like really embracing embracing it that it isn't a metaphor, it's not symbology. Like we can look at it through a Jungian lens, but let's just keep remembering the other than humans are sentient. They have an intelligence, they have a way of communicating. We're not making it up. We're not imagining these things. It's not, what do I think the plant is saying to me? That might be a doorway in, because we have to step out of
Mhm.
the cage
Mhm.
gradually. So maybe we do start to step out by saying, what do I think this plant is saying to me about me? Still very kind of human centered. But eventually it becomes, what do I notice about this other being? What do I think it's saying about itself? How does my
Yeah.
body respond to what it's doing or saying? And
Mhm.
as a quick example of it, because this stuff it's not that we don't do it, it's that we don't think in this way, which makes it
Mhm.
less, like you're saying, it's less impactful. But so yesterday I was climbing a mountain, and there's beautiful, beautiful, crystal clear water coming down. And what did my body want? Go in it, you know? Like it was just,
Mhm.
my whole
Mhm.
body was like, I want to be in that water. So, from this perspective, a relational perspective, we could see the water is inviting me in. The water itself is speaking to my body, saying, come in. It's a whole
Okay.
different way of looking at, why am I doing what I'm doing and what does it mean to be human?
That reminds me of something, actually. I hadn't even thought of this to be a part of this conversation, but it's an experience that I had. Oh, man, it's almost been 20 years ago now. So about 3 hours drive away from where we live into where the continental divide is between Alberta and British Columbia and Canada. There are these massive caves.
Mm,
And one of them is called Gargantua. It's called that, of course, because it's so big. And at the time, I was a youth leader, and we spent like a year getting ready to go through these caves. We go into these caves. It took 12 hours.
mm,
We're like inside, like there's literally thousands of tons of rock above us. We are inside the earth.
uh,
We turn off our lights. There is no visible light spectrum at all inside there. It's pitch black. It is only 4 degrees Celsius, which would be, I don't know, 38 or 40 degrees or something
mhm,
year round. Doesn't matter when you're in there. And we spend 12 hours getting through these caves. And I remember I was the first one out. They literally, there's a spot you have to take your helmet off
mm,
because it's so tight. They call it the birth canal. Um,
mm,
and
Mm.
then you come out of the caves under a waterfall. And I remember coming out under the waterfall, feeling the radiance of the sun against me. And I just couldn't help myself. I literally shouted for joy. I literally
mm,
erupted in energy as I stepped out of the cave. It was like I truly had been born again.
mm. Yeah,
Dude, like,
I think
yeah,
about
yeah.
that too. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I can just see you, like, as you talk about that, like, your whole body, your whole nervous system just, like, lights off. And I wonder how much of the remnants of that connection is still living inside of you, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's actually a really good question because as Julie started to describe the grass, describe, how was it speaking to you? What is your experience with it? That it is an integral energy exchange that's occurring between you and whatever that other living entity is, the earth as itself, being
Mhm.
a living entity. And and yeah, for sure, there's ways that experience just simply changed me.
Mm,
And I guess that's where one of the hard things we talk to people at the level of a podcast, people can hear, but they're still taking it through a cognitive lens.
mm,
Mm.
And and so, that's the one thing that we really need to do is I think emphasize what does the experience look like? And,
mhm.
and and maybe Julie, you can tell us about that. What are ways in which people can begin to experience what it means to be truly connected?
Yeah, and I think, to your point, and that's just your story was amazing and I could feel it with you, and I think there's something to say about that burst of joy also as part of why are we here,
Mhm.
so maybe we can pin that and come back to it. But I do want to talk about again, like the very simplest ways for us all to have these moments that don't require anything very, like awesome. It doesn't have to be 12 hours in a cave or, waterfalls or, all of this. That is very, it's easy to get that there because nature is so powerful there. But in the easiest ways to just this is what the method that I talk about in the book is very good at creating these opportunities in your own backyard, even in a matter of 2 or 3 hours, you're getting the same kind of, like vibrational heart swell or joy um, simply by one recognizing your own body is nature, so you're never not in nature, you're always in nature, and then to root into your body through the senses. So at least the 5, although we have many more than that, but coming into your own body in a moment, like stepping out of doors and then starting to notice, what does this place sound like? What does this place smell like? What does this place taste like? What does this place feel like? Going through the senses and then also remembering to include yourself because again, our broken
Mm.
paradigm makes us stay outside. So we're reunifying by saying, what sound am I making? We might hear the sound of our own breath, or maybe digesting if we've eaten something, or maybe we decide we want to vocalize something and add sound into the soundscape. what what does skin on skin feel like? What does my hair feel like? So remembering to include yourself as one of the natural beings in the environment. And then, beginning to like in this method, we call them invitations. And the guide will offer invitations based on their knowledge of the land or what's going on that day or a certain being that they may notice, oh, this would be a cool, kind of conversation for people to maybe have. But it can be as simple as, what being do you notice is catching your attention? And so they're going to catch our attention through a sound or a movement or something, the way that it looks, a color or fragrance. We're going to be drawn, and then spending time with that being. So it can be as simple as we've been talking about the grass. It can be a tree. It can be, a being that we're really familiar, like birds, or it can be like I've had, interactions with worms or, other insects, things that maybe are really like on the edge of like, is this really possible? But, the more you let go of those cultural prohibitions, the more you can step into, yeah, I'm really thinking I'm getting some sense of what this worm is doing, So again, it's in these very simple, daily, outside your door ways of coming into a sense of, yeah, maybe, I don't even want to say it, but notice what happens in your heart is all I want to say. Notice what happens in your heart if you go out and move in the world that way.
I'm curious, Julie, because you mentioned about like your five senses, what you bring in. When you're doing this with people, whereabouts would like the emotional energy that you're offering to the world come into that?
Well, in my mind, to me, I'm thinking of it as a medicine. I'm thinking of it as actually what is part of why are we here as humans is that emotional, if we look at it as vibration or frequency, I'm thinking about the frequency of awe, the frequency of, like you were expressing, that joy, the frequency of liberation, the frequency of love, of gratitude, all of those things as we know, at least I think we are understanding other species also have that medicine, but we know that humans do. And we know what it feels like human to human when we share that energy with each other. And so it's taking it a little more seriously that might be a very big part of why are we here? Like we are always trying to figure out as human beings, why are we here? And again, it's just my own musings of part of why we're here. I mean, another part that we can be sure of scientifically, we know we're here to co-create the atmosphere. Every time we exhale, we're co-creating the atmosphere. So we know we're doing that. I'm curious more about your question, though. Is there something more you wanted to say about your thoughts on that emotional piece?
Well, because I think about in terms of like when you bring out like emotional energy, it's kind of like if somebody, for example, has like negative emotional energy, they step outside, they step out to their backyard, like where they're bringing that emotional energy. How is that impacting things? Where is it about like what intention am I bringing out? Am I pulling from nature around me to bring in that positive energy, and as I'm expelling it, almost like that carbon dioxide as sort of an internal
Right.
and an external balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And part of what I do kind of prime people sometimes with, because we do carry so much shame and we carry
Hmm.
so much, I don't want to go too far with it, but a lot of judgment, self-judgment about what is good and what is not good. And I like to, again, like kind of break that mythology and saying, whatever is in your heart, whatever emotion you're bringing, the earth welcomes it. The rest of nature knows what to do with it. The earth is a great composter. So even, we're not supposed to necessarily hold those feelings in because it hurts our bodies. But if we can imagine giving it to the earth and knowing that she will take it and metabolize it and grow something beautiful with it. Again, we can imagine it not just like, oh, I wish that were true, but like if we look at the fungal world, the mushrooms that we see like miraculously decomposing plastics and toxic waste, like there is an actual reality to it. It's not too big of a leap to think that we might actually be unconditionally loved by the rest of nature, where we don't do that too well, but that we can understand. Again, if we want to look at our pets, they're a pretty good example that they come up to us when we're not feeling great and they want to help. Like I think we can see that if we're pet owners, especially dogs, will try to tend us. So I think it's good also to be aware of what am I bringing and that you want to give something in return, so maybe you do feel more uplifted and then thank you. Like, how would you thank this other being, whatever it is, that helped you through the challenge? What would you gift back? So that, again, it's bringing it back into kinship or relationship where you're not just like, help me, but it's like, yes, please help me, but I'm going to help you too. What can I do for you in return?
Love that. You look like you're really nibbling on something there, Jer.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on a more recent experience that was part of I think what you're talking about. So this spring, back up a little bit, I have four male cousins that were born the same year as me. We're the 77 crew. And this spring, one of them had a heart attack and passed away just suddenly. And super sad, right? It's just that there was a spot in the world that we always went to. We always went to this place for reunions. And there's a section of river that we always fished. And so a week ago Saturday, we went back out to the old bridge right by the Chateau Isabella in the shadows of Chief Mountain in this beautiful babbling stream, and we fished it. And the experience of fishing in this is one that you can't just stand on the banks and throw your line in the water because you won't catch fish that way. You have to consistently be moving with the water and in the water, and and there was a fundamental sense of not only connection to the earth but to the other people that were with us, and it's the same place that we formed those bonds when we were kids. And so that feeling of standing in the water, I can feel the stream running across my calves right now as I think about it. I can feel that sense of who I am being defined in part by my experience.
Mm. Yeah, like,
So,
you know,
Julie, you were talking about tagging the idea of that energetic burst and coming out of the cave. I could see that you as you said, that was kind of a thing that perked up your ears. Tell me about where that took you.
Yeah, I think, what I did say a little bit about it, but to really understand it again as a human capacity that is boxed in by our current culture and, maybe even underutilized or atrophied in a certain way because of this broken framework. So what we can do in the broken framework is very little compared to what we can do when we're liberated from it. And I feel like that is all terrain to be explored together, individually, but also together as where can this way, this ancient original way of being take humanity now at this critical juncture in our history. Like, I feel like, it's not just about feeling good. I think it's about regeneration. It's about restoration.
Mhm.
And again, if we do move into this concept of there is one organism named Earth or one consciousness named Earth, that every time we do add something like that in, it's extremely powerful, that it reverberates out in the same way that, like, just to play with, you feel the water that you were just talking about on your, in your legs, and to imagine the water still feels you, that the water was feeling you in everything that you were feeling. And how might that be good for the water? Again, it's just, these are things to question. I think Trent, kind of spinning back off of a little bit of what you were saying, like, yeah, maybe we might be more mindful of what we add in. Maybe we don't want to, maybe if we think, what is it going to be like? What am I contributing to the water if I'm going in with hatred? Maybe we don't want to do that. But I feel like it's just understanding or exploring and playing with the notion that I think, like you've both been saying, we're energetic beings. We play off of each other. We know human beings, laughter is contagious, anger is contagious, all kinds of things are, energies are contagious. And that we also are permeable with the other than humans. They can help us, we can help them. But again, just clocking it in a way that's more, aware, intentional, and friendly.
There's something that comes up for me that I've been thinking of on and off through this conversation, and the the situation of the world around us, and I mean individually. So Trent and I are in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and at any point in time, within as little as 3 minutes, it doesn't matter where you are in the city, you can be in a spot where you wouldn't really know you're in a city. It's set into this river valley, so there's a whole bunch of parks. There's 100 kilometers of trails that take you all over the place, and the South Saskatchewan River runs through it. And so I think sometimes I don't realize what it is like for some other people that live in these that don't have the same capacity to easily reconnect with nature.
Yeah. Actually, as you bring that up, specifically, Jeremy, that makes me think of the founding of Central Park in New York and the reason why that came around, because they were doing that specifically for the health of the individuals that were living there, because they saw during the time, because New York is laid out on this grid pattern, that there was a deleterious effect on people's mental health. So Central Park, when you go there, it is intentionally planned, but it's in such a way that it doesn't have that grid pattern, because, well, it is manageable. It is actually stifling for human growth, creativity, and life. You can't just take a tree and stick it in concrete and have it grow amongst power poles and sewer lines. It needs soil and water.
Right. And I also think that some of this, as we regain our sanity, that we would do less of that kind of harm. Again, these aren't things to predict, but they're potentials. That if, when we really do understand that we are optimized, our mental health, our physical health is optimized with the rest of nature, that we would allow for that to, be a bigger part of how do we live? I think we're trying to do it anyway, just in terms of dealing with climate crisis, but, greening rooftops or planting more trees or giving land back to the indigenous people that were always the steward of the land, really clearing out invasive species, all of the different kinds of things. I think that, again, we're doing it. I feel like, why am I saying what I'm saying, and why am I so excited to talk about it with you guys, is because we're mental health professionals. And so I feel like we have a very particular role to play, because we are mental health experts, so for us, it's like we're primed, like you're talking about internal family systems or systems theory in general, which, again, my licensure is very much that as well, to broaden it out to include the other than human beings, because that's reality, so again, for us as clinicians to begin by rerouting our own mind and then bringing that to the people that we work with, because again, it to me, it's like a no-brainer. We have all the clinical skills of how to facilitate a healthy relationship and how not to impose things or dominate a relationship. Like if we're doing family therapy, we're not going to go in and say, now you say this and you say that. No, we're setting up the opportunity for health to occur. So again, I feel like as mental health professionals, we're in a really unique and important position. And that's why I really, really wrote the book, to help us advance our field,
And yeah, in fact, like it needs to start, like you say, well, for everybody, but if clinicians get on board, if clinicians start to understand this, then it become more embedded into their work, and that embedded work can make a bigger effect on the hundreds and thousands or whatever people that we see across a career, for sure. In fact, that's a great spot here. It's time, Trent, isn't it? It's time for the shameless plug.
It is time for the shameless plug. Sorry, I
Okay,
didn't mean to go
so
Bob Barker on
one of
you.
the reasons that, of course, we have people on is because we want to make a difference in the world. We want the messages of people that are aligned with our values and understanding about what will bring wellness to get out there. So tell us about your work, where we can find your book, how to connect with you.
Wow, I was expecting a shameless plug for you guys.
No, no, no,
So
no, no, no.
it's
Shameless
my
plug.
shameless plug.
Yeah, for Julie. Yeah,
Okay.
Julie's
Yeah.
shameless plug.
My
Yeah.
shameless plug. Yeah, I
We do it every
mean,
time.
yeah, the book is a great introduction. It's not the practice. The practice is an embodied experiential practice. So that's an important piece to understand, that as much as we get the idea, it doesn't do anything. Just like meditation, you can think about it all day long. You're not meditating, So this is an embodied practice. I offer I offer things online. I offer hybrid. I offer in person through my company, Experience Elemental, forest therapy guides that are certified through the association where I was certified through, which is the one that I really recommend, is ANFT, Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. You can find guides all over the world, so you can always hire a guide or, go out with a guide to teach you this particular method. What else did I want to say about it? Just remembering, again, this isn't the shameless plug, but just sort of coming back to our field, that what I'm really asking us to look at is not to add another tool to our kit. This isn't about adding nature to your toolkit. This is about changing the foundation of mental health, and then you do whatever you already do. Like, everything we're doing is fantastic. We just have a faulty premise, not our fault. But once you see it, it's sort of like ethical for us to then address it foundationally. And again, I'm going to keep trying to get the powers that be, the boards and the DSMs and everybody to lock on and say, yeah, this is a mental health issue. But for those of us that are clinicians, there's no permission needed. Just reroute and understand that when the foundation is fixed, this kind of goes even to housing. When the foundation is fixed, everything else works so much better. So, yeah, because I think that clinicians, sometimes are guilty of using nature as another, tool. I know I'm repeating myself, but that just goes along with the dominator paradigm, where we're saying, oh, I'm going to use nature. No, we don't use nature. This is, again, changing the foundation, where we have a different relationship, our mind, our body, to the earth. And then we can, first of all, see what's still left that needs to be fixed, because a lot of what we're suffering with, the dysregulation, anxiety, depression, loneliness, the things that come after that, are from this false paradigm, this dysregulation from our body knows it's part of Earth, and our mind is like, no, that's really hard on a human being to have to live in a false paradigm. It's very hard. So changing that and then seeing what does anybody need next, you know? So that's a
Totally.
shameless plug for me and this way of thinking.
Awesome. Love it.
Fantastic.
Love
Fantastic.
it.
Hmm. So we should probably start to wrap up. We always do a reflection at the end about the things that are gonna stand out to us most. And this time I'm going to shove it over to Trent first. What do you think?
Okay. Fair. Thank you, Jeremy. You know, like the one thing that is really sticking out to me, and you've said it at the beginning, you've said it all the way through, the concept of rerouting. And I really love that, because that means, like, that we do have the capacity, that it is there, that, the soil is there, that we have the possibility of growing more. It's just about taking our roots and planting them deep back in the earth in whatever ways that we can, as we do that as mental health professionals or as individuals. So yeah, like as I'm getting my aloe vera plant repotted, I'm going to imagine rerouting myself back into the earth. Yeah. What about for
Lovely.
yourself, Jeremy?
Yeah. So yeah, so for me, I think the biggest link that I've made today is as I expressed a couple of experiences with nature, is a realizing that potentially what was happening there is this partition or whatever that's been placed in our mind that has separated us from the world. That those were moments where that partition broke. I didn't actually somehow need to make it happen. This is just the state of who I am. And if I could take those experiences and be more intentional on my day-to-day processes to be within my the fundamental of reality, like you said, rerouted, rather than seeing it as just another experience.
Mm, that's a good way. Yeah. Yeah.
What about for yourself,
What stands
Julie?
out for you, Julie? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm really taking, and it really it feels good in my heart and soul, is, just how natural it is, because as I've listened to each of you talk about the things that you've said, it strikes me that, yeah, you're already doing it. And that again reinforces for me that it is our nature. And again, I don't know, it just, I feel encouraged, and I feel like the camaraderie. I think I'm taking away this camaraderie, and yeah, just more excitement of how we can continue to support each other in rerouting each other, ourselves, anybody else who wants to, you know? So I think I'm taking, yeah, camaraderie, community, simpatico. I don't know. That's
Love
what
it.
I'm taking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Julie,
On the,
once again, thank you for joining us today.
Yes. Thank you. Thank
on that note, I'm Trent Akers.
I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health.